About 20 years ago, I went on a backpacking trip through the Yosemite backcountry with a couple of friends. Unknown to me, at one of our stops when my pack was off, my buddy Ron started to fill up parts of my pack with some rocks from the trail. Now, Ron was probably in better shape than me anyway, but on the next stretch of trail, we were on this slow, gradual uphill, and Ron was way out in front while I was struggling to keep up. Eventually, I think he felt sorry for me because he stopped, and when I caught up, he started opening up pockets on my backpack and taking out fist-sized rocks and throwing them away. Now, from that experience, I learned two things that I want to share with you. One, don't go backpacking with Ron. And two, avoid carrying extra weight because it only makes things harder. Now, that second nugget, I think, is something like what Peter tells us in what we read today from 1 Peter. Listen to this. Casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. See, Peter's call is a lot like my backpacking advice. Avoid carrying the stuff that you don't have to. Now, I had some experience with rocks. I wonder if Peter had a little experience with anxiety. You know, there was that time that Peter walked on water, right? And it was going really well. He was up on top of the waves and walking along until he started thinking a little bit more about the wind and the waves. And he got a little bit anxious, I think. There was also that time that Peter snuck into the courtyard of the high priest. You remember when Jesus was arrested and they were putting him on trial, and Peter really wanted to overhear what was going on, and he wanted to stay close, so he snuck in, and it was going really well until he got a little concerned that people might be associating him with Jesus. But Peter changed too. The anxiety maybe and the worry from those times, it doesn't show up as much after the resurrection, because we see some different things from Peter after the resurrection. In fact, in the book of Acts, Peter gets arrested 2 times. And one time he gets beaten up and then he gets released, and another time he gets thrown into jail until an angel sets him free. And we don't see Peter's responses in those cases driven by anxiety or worry or fear. Something changed. And I think Peter brings that something into what he writes in 1 Peter, into what we're reading today. You don't have to carry the worries. Instead, give them to your God, he says. Now, at Peter's time, there was plenty to be worried about. I mean, Nero had recently come to power. Christianity was no longer a legal religion. There was persecution beginning in Rome, and Peter is in Rome. He's writing from there, and it's spreading out, and so he's writing to people further out. There's a growing number of arrests. People are being imprisoned. Families are being torn apart. There's a lot to be worried about. Nothing feels safe. Now, you and I don't have the same worries as Peter, but there's still plenty to be anxious about in our time. And each worry that we carry is like an extra rock thrown in a pack, slung on your back. So my question for you is this: what rocks have you been lugging around? Is it a job loss? It's got you worried and anxious? Is it foolish people? You know, maybe the ones who don't know how to wear a face mask correctly while they're at Safeway, or the ones who get rude and upset, or the ones that get really loud and vocal about their opinions on what needs to happen. Maybe family tensions. Or maybe you've got stress about school. Maybe you've got your own health issues that you're concerned about. Or maybe you have concern for your kids. Maybe you have concern for your parents. Some of you probably have concern for both. Every rock adds weight. Every worry pulls you down, and they will tire you out. They will exhaust you. And when you and I have all these rocks on our backs, we tend to react in a couple of ways. Sometimes we simply give up. Like there's no more strength and there's no more point, and we stop moving. We no longer expect anything of ourselves. We tell others not to expect anything of us. We can be defeated by worry. We can stop trying, and we can stop expecting anything better, expecting anything to change. Sometimes we get angry, and we start throwing rocks. our worries become ammunition, and we throw them at anything and anyone that passes by, thinking maybe that'll make us feel better. And we think that maybe by throwing some of these rocks at others, it'll lighten our load. But in actuality, when we start doing that, there's just more weight that gets added to our backs. More rocks get piled on. And Peter invites us to take a different approach. Hand over your rocks. It's ironic, this advice that he gives, because on the one hand it makes sense, and yet it flies in the face of our natural desires. We'd like to give up or start throwing those rocks, and while those two seem opposite, they actually share a common false assumption. Both of those responses assume that dealing with these things is up to me. Peter says it's not. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God. See, it's not up to you. So stop acting like it is. If the rocks that you carry are crushing you under their weight, then allow your God to deal with them. That's what he wants to do for you. In fact, a better translation of this verse would be something like this. Accept the humbling you've received. If the worry and the anxiety and the rocks of this world seem too big for you, then admit that they are too big for you. Accept the humble position that you're in. Accept the fact that you need someone bigger. Accept the fact you need someone bigger and stronger and more reliable than yourself. And allow your God to carry these things. Allow Jesus to carry your rocks because he can handle it. He carried his cross until he could stand no more. He carried your sin until he breathed no more. Allow him in his new life, in his resurrected life, to carry your anxieties and your worries and your rocks until they are no more. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God. Get this. So that at the proper time, he may exalt you. At the right time. At the proper time. At the time of his return. At the time when you see him as he truly is. At the time when you see yourself as you truly are. Then he will exalt you. He will lift you up. So accept that you are an insufficient answer for the worries of this world. And accept that Jesus is the all-sufficient answer for every worry and every rock and every burden. When you take that humble position, he promises to raise you up above these things. This is your confidence. This is the hope which carries you. See, you don't have to be bigger than your worries or your fears or your rocks to get past them, because Jesus is bigger. And Jesus raises you up. He will raise you up. He will exalt you at the proper time. He'll work in his timing, and he'll care for you, and he'll carry your rocks. Amen.